The darkness of space belonged to them. For 10,000 years, the Vex-High Empire had ruled the galaxy with iron claws and burning hatred. Their massive black ships moved like deadly shadows between the stars, bringing death to every world they touched. The Vex-High were monsters born from nightmares. They stood 12 feet tall, their bodies a twisted mix of living flesh and cold metal. Sharp spikes grew from their shoulders and backs. Their eyes glowed red in faces that were half machine, half alien beast. When they spoke, their voices sounded like grinding metal and dying screams. Each Vex-High warrior was a perfect killer. They had replaced their weak flesh with strong metal parts. Their arms could crush stone. Their legs could run faster than any natural creature. Tubes and wires ran under their skin, pumping strange chemicals that made them stronger and more violent. But the most terrible thing about the Vex-High was not their bodies. It was their hunger. They did not just want to conquer other worlds. They wanted to eat them. Their ships would land on a planet and begin the harvest. They would take everything, the metals, the plants, the animals, and the people. The lucky ones died quickly. The others became food or slaves. The Vex-High organized themselves like a pack of wild beasts. The strongest led and the weak followed or died. At the top sat the High Overlords, ancient creatures who had lived for thousands of years. Below them were the Hive Lords, younger but still deadly beyond measure. Each Hive Lord commanded fleets of warships and armies of lesser Vex-High. High Overlord Ketharak was the oldest and most feared of them all. His body was more machine than flesh now. Cables and metal plates covered most of his original skin. His left arm had been replaced with a weapon that could melt steel. His right eye was a red scanner that could see through walls. When he walked, servos whined and metal clicked against metal. Ketharak sat on his throne aboard the massive ship called World Eater. The throne room was dark and filled with the smell of oil and blood. Holographic displays showed him maps of the galaxy, marking worlds that belonged to the Empire and worlds yet to be taken. A younger Vex-High approached the throne. This was Hive Lord Zexara, recently promoted after destroying 3 star systems. Her body still showed more flesh than metal, marking her as young by Vex-High standards. She moved carefully, knowing that showing weakness before Ketharak meant death. "Great Overlord," she said, her voice respectful but eager. "The scout fleets have returned from the Outer Rim. They report a new system with intelligent life." Ketharak's mechanical eye focused on her with a soft whirring sound. "Show me." The air above them filled with a 3-dimensional map. A small yellow star appeared with several planets orbiting around it. One planet glowed blue and green, clearly full of life. "The system is called Sol," Zexara explained. "The third planet contains a species that calls itself human. They appear to be very primitive. They have only basic space travel and simple weapons." Ketharak studied the display with interest. The planet looked rich and fertile, perfect for harvesting. "How primitive are they?" "They have barely left their home world, Great Overlord. A few small colonies on nearby planets, but nothing more. Our scouts estimate they have been in space for less than 300 years. They use chemical rockets and basic fusion power." A sound came from Ketharak's throat that might have been laughter, if machines could laugh. 300 years? We have boots older than their entire space program." Other Hive Lords in the throne room made similar sounds of amusement. The idea of such young, weak creatures trying to survive in space seemed funny to them. "What is their military strength?" Ketharak asked. Zexara checked her data pad. "Minimal, Great Overlord. Perhaps 50 combat vessels total, all very small. Their largest ship is smaller than our smallest fighter. Their weapons appear to be kinetic projectiles and primitive energy beams. Population, approximately 8 billion on the homeworld, with maybe another million spread across their small colonies." Ketharak's red eye dimmed as he thought about this. 8 billion lives to harvest. Millions of tons of biological material to feed the Empire. A rich world to strip of metals and minerals, and all defended by creatures barely out of their caves. "This system will serve as a training exercise," he decided. "Zexara, you will lead the assault. Take 200 ships, enough to give you practice commanding a large fleet, but not so many that you waste resources on such weak prey." Zexara's eyes glowed brighter with excitement. This would be her chance to prove herself worthy of greater commands. "Thank you, Great Overlord. When shall we begin?" "Immediately. But remember, this is a training exercise. Study their response patterns. Learn how primitive species react to overwhelming force. Take your time and observe before crushing them. There may be useful data to gather from their struggle. What of prisoners, Great Overlord? Should we attempt to take some alive for study?" Ketherick waved one metal claw dismissively. If any survive the initial assault, process them as usual. If their biology is interesting, we will harvest genetic samples. If not, they become fuel like all the others. As Zexara left to prepare her fleet, Ketherick turned back to his star maps. The Sol system was marked in red now, designated for conquest and harvest. Soon it would be marked in black, meaning dead and consumed. He had conquered over 1,000 worlds in his long life. He had watched entire species die screaming as his ships blocked out their suns. He had seen the terror in alien eyes when they realized their gods would not save them from the Vexhai hunger. But something about this felt different. Not the conquest itself, that would be routine. These humans were too weak to provide any real challenge. What interested him was their response. How would such a primitive species react when faced with forces beyond their understanding? Most species tried to surrender when they saw the Vexhai fleets. Others ran, scattering to distant stars in the hope of survival. A few fought, but their resistance usually broke within days once they saw the true power of the Empire. Ketherick wondered which type these humans would be. Probably the surrendering kind. Young species usually were. They had not yet learned that the galaxy was a place of endless hunger and death. They still believed in hope and mercy and other foolish concepts. He called up files from recent conquests. The Zelkari had surrendered immediately, begging for mercy that never came. The Thorians had tried to run, but Vexahai ships were faster than any refugee fleet. The Mandek had fought bravely for almost a week before their last city fell. All of them were gone now. Their worlds were empty rocks, stripped of everything useful. Their people were processed into biofuel, or recycled into Vexhai technology. This was the way of the galaxy. The strong consumed the weak, and the Vexhai were the strongest of all. Soon the humans would learn this lesson. Soon, their blue-green world would be another empty rock in space, and their species would be another footnote in the endless story of Vexhai conquest. Ketherick smiled, if the twisted metal that served as his mouth could be called a smile. These humans had no idea what was coming for them. They probably thought they were safe in their little system, protected by distance and ignorance. They would learn otherwise very soon. Captain Sarah Chen floated in the command chair of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the main screen. Her ship was humanity's pride, the first vessel capable of traveling between star systems in weeks instead of years. It was still small compared to the massive colony ships that carried humans to Mars and Europa, but it was fast and carried the best sensors Earth could build. Sarah was returning from a mapping mission to Alpha Centauri when her sensor officer, Lieutenant Torres, called out from his station. "Captain, I'm picking up 3 objects at the edge of our sensor range. They're moving toward us at high speed." Sarah pushed herself over to Torres' station to look at the readings. The objects were large, much larger than anything humans had ever built. They were also moving faster than should be possible. "Are they ships?" she asked. "I think so, Captain, but they're not using any propulsion system we recognize. No fusion signatures, no ion trails. They're just moving." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it looked like they were about to find out. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We may be making first contact with an alien species. Everyone stay calm and follow protocols." The 3 alien ships grew larger on the screen as they approached. They were dark and angular, like massive knives cutting through space. Strange lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns that hurt to look at. "Captain," Torres said, his voice tight with worry, "they're not responding to any of our communication attempts. Radio, laser, even basic mathematical sequences. Nothing." Sarah ordered her crew to take defensive positions, though she knew their ship carried only basic mining lasers and small kinetic weapons. If these aliens meant harm, the Defiance could not put up much of a fight. The alien ship stopped just outside weapon range and hung in space like waiting predators. For long minutes, nothing happened. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in the silence. Then the aliens opened fire. Energy beams lanced out from all 3 ships at once. The Defiance's shields, designed to stop small meteorites and radiation, lasted less than a second. The beams tore through the ship's hull like paper. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, shouted Engineer Martinez over the alarms. "We're losing atmosphere." Sarah grabbed the communication console as her ship shook from more hits. "This is Captain Chen of the Earthship Defiance."
"We are not hostile."
Repeat, "We are not hostile." The aliens did not stop shooting. The Defiance spun helplessly as its engines died. Half the crew was already dead or dying. Sarah could smell smoke and burning electronics. Through the gaps in her broken hull, she could see space and stars. Then the communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it sounded like grinding metal. "Primitive species of the third world of Sol," the voice said. "You have been found suitable for harvest. Your resistance is noted but irrelevant. You will prepare your worlds for occupation and processing." Sarah tried to respond, but another energy beam struck the bridge. Sparks flew from control panels as the lights went out. The alien voice continued. "You have 7 rotations of your star to prepare. Gather your population in designated areas for efficient collection. Do not attempt to hide or flee. Resistance will result in immediate processing of your entire species." "Processing?" Sarah gasped into her dying radio. "What do you mean processing?" "You will serve the HFY Empire as fuel, materials, and labor. Your world will provide resources for our expansion. This is the natural order. The weak feed the strong." The communication cut off. The 3 alien ships hung in space for a few more minutes as if studying the dying human vessel. Then they turned and disappeared, moving faster than anything Sarah had ever seen. Sarah floated in the dark ruins of her bridge, barely breathing through her emergency mask. Around her, the few surviving crew members worked desperately to repair their communication system. They had to warn Earth. They had to tell everyone what was coming. Lieutenant Torres managed to get a weak signal working. Sarah grabbed the microphone with shaking hands. "Earth Command, this is Captain Chen of the UES Defiance. We have made contact with hostile aliens. They call themselves the HFY Empire. They are coming to Sol System in 7 days. They intend to harvest us." The response from Earth Command was immediate but confused. "Defiance, repeat your last message. Did you say aliens?" Confirmed Earth Command. 3 large warships, technology far beyond ours. They attacked without warning. They're treating us like animals to be slaughtered." Sarah closed her eyes as she continued her report. She told them about the ships, the weapons, the voice that spoke of harvesting humans like crops. She told them they had 7 days to prepare for something humanity had never faced before. When she finished, there was a long silence from Earth. Finally, Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the static. "Captain Chen, are you certain of what you saw?" "Yes, sir. The ship recordings should confirm everything if we can get them back to Earth." "Understood. Defiance, can you make it home?" Sarah looked around her broken ship. The hull was cracked, the engines were dead, and they were losing air from dozens of holes. But Torres was nodding at her. He thought they could make it if they used the emergency boosters. "We'll try, Admiral." "But sir, 7 days isn't much time. We'll make it enough, Captain. Humanity has faced extinction before. We're still here." But as Sarah began the long journey home in her crippled ship, she wondered if Admiral Rodriguez was right. The HFY had seemed so confident, so casual about destroying human civilization. They talked about harvesting people like farmers, talked about gathering wheat. What could humanity do against enemies who saw them as nothing more than resources to be collected? The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Sarah's crew worked around the clock to keep their dying ship together. They had to shut down life support on half the ship to save power. 2 more crew members died from their injuries during the flight, but they made it. As Earth grew larger on their screen, Sarah could already see the signs of frantic activity. Ships were moving everywhere. Military vessels heading out from Earth, cargo haulers rushing between planets, even civilian craft being pressed into service. Humanity was preparing for war. Sarah knew it would not be enough. She had seen the alien ships, felt the power of their weapons. Humanity's entire space fleet would not last an hour against even one of those dark vessels. But as she watched the controlled chaos around Earth, she felt something she had not expected to feel after her encounter with the HFY. Hope humans were not giving up. They were not surrendering or running away. They were getting ready to fight even against impossible odds. Maybe Admiral Rodriguez was right. Maybe humanity had survived worse things than this. Sarah just hoped the HFY were not ready for what they would find when they came to Sol System. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Thermopylae, watching the edge of the solar system through the main display. His ship had once been a cargo hauler, designed to carry supplies between Earth and Mars. Now it bristled with weapons welded to every available surface. Missile pods, railguns, and energy cannons stuck out from the hull like metal thorns. It was not much of a warship, but it was what humanity had. In 7 days, they had converted every vessel they could find into fighting machines. Cargo haulers became destroyers. Mining ships became assault craft. Even luxury cruise liners now carried nuclear warheads. Marcus was 62 years old. and had fought in 3 wars between Earth and the Mars colonies. He thought he had seen everything warfare could offer. But this was different. This time, humanity faced an enemy that wanted to eat them. Admiral called his sensor operator, a young woman named Lisa Park. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures at the system edge. Whatever's coming, it's big." "How big?" Marcus asked. "Sir, the computer is having trouble counting them. At least 200 contacts, some of them larger than anything we've ever built." Marcus nodded grimly. Captain Chen's report had prepared them for this, but seeing it happen was still a shock. The Vex High were coming in force. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "This is it. Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to buy time and make them pay for every meter of space." The enemy fleet appeared on the display like a cloud of black death. The ships were huge and dark, shaped like cruel knives. At the front came 3 massive vessels that made Earth's largest space stations look like toys. Marcus opened a channel to the lead enemy ship. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered our system without permission and threatened our people. Leave now or face the consequences." The response came immediately in that same grinding voice Captain Chen had described. "Primitive admiral of a doomed species. I am Hive Lord Zexara of the Vex High Empire. Your 7 days have ended. Prepare your ships for destruction and your people for harvest." "I have a counteroffer," Marcus replied. "Go back where you came from and we'll let you live." The alien voice sounded amused. "Your bravery is noted but meaningless. You have 47 vessels against our 200. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick." Marcus looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were scared. Any sane person would be scared. But none of them looked ready to give up. "Let me tell you something about humans," Marcus said into the communication system. "We don't surrender. We don't retreat. And we sure as hell don't let alien monsters eat our families." Computer play file 77 Alpha. The transmission switched to images from Earth's history. Soldiers holding a line against impossible odds. Cities under siege that refused to fall. Ships going down with guns still firing. Through it all, Marcus spoke. "This is who we are. This is what we do. We fight when we're outnumbered. We fight when we're outgunned. We fight when there's no hope of winning. And when you kill us, the ones behind us fight harder." The transmission ended. For a moment, space was silent. Then Hive Lord Zexara spoke again. "Your history is irrelevant. Your courage is wasted. You will die and your worlds will feed our empire." "Maybe," Marcus said. "But you're going to remember this day for the rest of your lives. All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Light them up." The human fleet opened fire first. Missiles streaked across space toward the alien ships. Railgun rounds followed at incredible speeds. Energy beams lanced out from converted cargo haulers and mining ships. The Vex High response was devastating. Their energy weapons cut through human ships like they were made of paper. The frigate Manchester exploded in a ball of fire. The destroyer Kiev broke in half, its crew screaming over the radio. But the humans kept fighting. When the cruiser Wellington lost its engines, Captain Morrison used maneuvering thrusters to ram a Vex High destroyer. Both ships exploded, taking hundreds of lives with them. "Sir," Lisa Park called out, "the enemy's taking more damage than expected." "We're actually hurting them." Marcus looked at his tactical display. The aliens were winning, but they were paying a price. For every human ship destroyed, they were losing one of their own. That should have been impossible given their superior technology. They're not used to fighting enemies who don't give up, Marcus realized. Their tactics assume the other side will break and run. The battle raged for hours. Human ships died in terrible numbers, but they took aliens with them. When the destroyer Phoenix lost all weapons, its captain sent a final message. "Remember the Alamo, remember Pearl Harbor, remember today." Then he rammed his reactor into overdrive and flew straight into a Vex High cruiser. The explosion vaporized both ships. Marcus watched his fleet disappear piece by piece. Good men and women were dying, people he had known for years. But they were making the aliens pay. Every Vex High ship they destroyed was one less threat to Earth. The Thermopylae shuddered as enemy fire tore through its hull. "All hands, abandon ship," Marcus ordered. "Get to the escape pods." But even as his crew evacuated, Marcus stayed on the bridge. He had one last card to play. The Thermopylae might be dying, but it still had nuclear warheads in its missile tubes. He aimed his ship at the largest Vex High dreadnought and fired every weapon he had left. Then he set the remaining nuclear warheads to detonate in 60 seconds and aimed the Thermopylae straight at the enemy flagship. "This is Admiral Rodriguez," he broadcast on all frequencies. To any humans listening, remember what you saw here today. We don't go quietly, we don't make it easy, and we never ever give up. The Thermopylae struck the Vex-High dreadnought just as its nuclear warheads exploded. The blast lit up space like a new sun and sent both ships tumbling apart in burning pieces. Aboard her flagship, Hive Lord Zexara stared at the tactical display in shock. The human fleet was gone, but so were 60 of her ships. That was impossible. No primitive species had ever inflicted such casualties on the Vex-High. Hive Lord, her communication officer reported, "We're detecting massive energy signatures from all inhabited worlds in this system. The humans appear to be powering up planetary defense systems." Zexara studied the sensor readings. Every human world showed the energy patterns of weapons charging. Massive weapons built into the planets themselves. They knew we were coming, she realized. They've been preparing. As her fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, Zexara began to understand that this would not be the easy conquest she had expected. The humans had used their 7 days well. They had turned their entire star system into a fortress. And if their fleet fought this hard, how much harder would they fight for their homeworlds? For the first time in her life, Hive Lord Zexara felt something she had never experienced before. Something the Vex-High had thought they were immune to. She felt afraid. The journey through the Sol system became a nightmare for Hive Lord Zexara and her fleet. What should have been a simple passage to the human homeworld turned into a running battle that lasted for weeks. The humans had transformed every piece of rock in their system into a weapon. Asteroids that looked empty and harmless suddenly opened up to reveal missile batteries and railguns. Space stations that appeared to be simple mining platforms turned out to be massive fortresses, bristling with nuclear warheads. Mars had been turned into a planet-sized gun. Its entire surface was covered with weapon emplacements that could fire projectiles at incredible speeds. When Zexara's fleet tried to pass by the Red Planet, it unleashed a barrage that destroyed 12 Vex-High ships in the first volley. How is this possible? Zexara demanded from her command center. Our intelligence said they were primitive. Her tactical officer, a veteran of 50 conquests, studied the battle reports with growing concern. Hive Lord, these humans have somehow advanced their technology by centuries in just 7 days. They're using weapons we've never seen before. But it was not just the weapons that troubled the Vex-High. It was the way humans fought. They used tactics that made no sense by normal military standards. Entire space stations would detonate themselves just to damage passing Vex-High ships. Asteroid bases would launch themselves like massive missiles, accepting their own destruction to ram enemy vessels. The most disturbing incident came when a human cargo ship, seemingly unarmed and helpless, approached a Vex-High destroyer asking to surrender. When the aliens lowered their shields to accept the surrender, the cargo ship revealed itself to be packed with nuclear bombs. The explosion destroyed both ships, but the human crew had planned it that way. "They're insane," muttered one of Zexara's officers. "They fight like they want to die." "No," Zexara corrected, beginning to understand. "They fight like death means nothing compared to stopping us." As the siege continued, reports came in from Vex-High scientists studying captured human technology. What they found made no sense. Human equipment was crude and simple compared to Vex-High biomechanical systems. But it was also strangely effective. Where Vex-High technology was elegant and efficient, human technology was brutal and direct. A human missile might not be as advanced as a Vex-High plasma torpedo, but it carried 3 times the explosive power and cost 1/10 as much to build. Human armor was thick and ugly compared to Vex-High biometal, but it could take incredible punishment and still function. "They don't build things to last," reported the chief scientist. "They build things to work long enough to kill the enemy." Even more disturbing were the reports from Vex-High bioanalysts who had tried to study human remains from the first battle. Every other species the Vex-High had encountered could be absorbed into their biomechanical matrix. Enemy dead could be recycled into useful materials or processed into biofuel. But human tissue resisted absorption. When Vex-High scientists tried to integrate human biological samples into their systems, something went wrong. The human cells seemed to fight back, corrupting the biomechanical matrix and causing system failures. "It's as if their very biology refuses to accept defeat," the chief bioanalyst reported to Zexara. "Even dead, they continue to resist us." High Overlord Kethrak arrived in the Sol system 3 weeks into the siege, his massive flagship World Eater accompanied by reinforcements. Zexara met him in the command chamber, expecting punishment for the delays. Instead, Kethrak studied the battle reports with interest. His ancient red eye scanned data displays showing human defensive positions, casualty reports, and tactical analyses. "You have lost nearly half your fleet," he observed. "Yes, Great Overlord, I have failed you." "No," Kethrak said slowly. "You have discovered something interesting. These humans are not like other species we have conquered." He called up holographic displays showing the battle for Mars. Human defenders had held their ground even when their positions were overrun. Some had fought with their bare hands when their weapons ran out. Others had activated self-destruct charges rather than be captured. "Look at this," Kethrak pointed to a tactical recording. "This human commander had a chance to evacuate his base before we overran it. Instead, he stayed behind to manually target our ships. He died at his post, but his final shots destroyed 2 of our cruisers." Zexara nodded. "They seem incapable of logical retreat, Great Overlord. Even when defeat is certain, they continue fighting." "More than that," Kethrak said. "They're learning from each engagement. Watch this sequence." The display showed a human defense station being destroyed by Vex-High plasma cannons. Hours later, when the aliens encountered a similar station, it was equipped with new reflective armor that deflected their plasma beams. "They're adapting faster than should be possible," Kethrak mused. "Most species take years to develop countermeasures to our weapons. These humans do it in days." A communication officer approached with urgent news. "Great Overlord, our sensors are detecting strange energy readings from the deepest parts of the human home world. Something is happening in their underground facilities." Kethrak's mechanical eye focused on the sensor data. Deep beneath Earth's surface, massive energy signatures were building. The humans were working on something big. "What are they building down there?" Zexara wondered. "I don't know," Kethrak replied, "but I suspect we will find out soon." As if in response to his words, a transmission came from Earth. The image showed a human military leader in an underground command bunker. He was older, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was strong. "This is Admiral Rodriguez speaking from Earth Defense Command. I have a message for the Vex-High Empire." Kethrak leaned forward with interest. This human had survived the space battle and was now commanding the defense of his homeworld. "You came to our system thinking you would find easy prey," Rodriguez continued. "You thought we were just another primitive species you could harvest and consume. You were wrong. The transmission showed images from human history, cities under siege that had held out for years, soldiers fighting against impossible odds, entire populations choosing death over surrender. We are the species that survived ice ages by learning to make fire. We are the species that crossed oceans in wooden boats to find new lands. We are the species that split the atom and walked on other worlds. And we are the species that has never, in all our history, accepted extinction quietly." Rodriguez leaned closer to the camera. "You want to harvest us? You want to turn us into fuel for your empire? Then come and try. But know this, we've spent the last month preparing a surprise for you, and I guarantee you'll remember the cost of making war on humanity for the rest of your very short lives." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Kethrak studied the energy readings from Earth's underground facilities. "Double our defensive formations," he ordered. "Whatever they're planning, it will be desperate and dangerous." But even as he prepared for the final assault on Earth, Kethrak felt something he had not experienced in 1,000 years of conquest: uncertainty. These humans were unlike any enemy he had ever faced. They fought with a combination of intelligence and insanity that made them unpredictable. They seemed to view their own deaths as acceptable casualties if it meant harming their enemies. What kind of species chose mutual destruction over surrender? Kethrak was about to find out. The final assault on Earth began with the full fury of the Vex-High Empire. High Overlord Kethrak unleashed every weapon in his arsenal, determined to end this troublesome resistance once and for all. Plasma cannons turned Earth's sky into a burning hell. Energy beams carved deep scars across continents. The blue jewel of the Sol system began to turn black under the alien bombardment, but still the humans fought back. From deep underground bunkers, human weapons returned fire. Missiles erupted from hidden silos, streaking up through the burning atmosphere to strike at Vex-High ships. Railguns built into mountain ranges hurled metal slugs at incredible speeds. Even as their world burned around them, the humans kept shooting. Kethrak studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. His fleet had been pounding Earth for 3 days, yet organized resistance continued. By now, most species would have surrendered or been completely destroyed. But these humans seemed to grow more determined as their situation became more hopeless. "Great Overlord," reported his tactical officer. Ground forces are requesting permission to land. They say orbital bombardment alone will not break human resistance, Kethrak nodded. Begin the landing. But tell our warriors to be careful. These humans have shown they prefer death to defeat. The first wave of Vex-High dropships descended through Earth's burning atmosphere. They landed in major cities, expecting to find broken populations ready for harvest. Instead, they found trap after trap. Buildings that looked empty were filled with explosives. Streets that appeared clear were lined with hidden weapons. Even human children carried grenades, detonating themselves when Vex-High warriors came too close. The worst fighting was in the underground tunnels beneath major cities. Humans had turned subway systems and sewer networks into mazes of death. Vex-High warriors used to conquering in open battle found themselves fighting room by room, corridor by corridor, against enemies who knew every tunnel and hiding place. In the ruins of New York, a Vex-High strike team cornered a group of human soldiers in a collapsed subway station. The humans were out of ammunition and wounded, clearly defeated. The Vex-High commander ordered them to surrender. Instead, the human leader smiled and held up a small device. "You want to know what makes us different from every other species you've conquered?" he said. "We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure you remember the price." He pressed the button. The entire city block exploded, taking both the human soldiers and the Vex-High strike team with it. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Humans who could no longer fight effectively chose to die in ways that hurt their enemies. They detonated weapons caches when aliens came near. They collapsed buildings on Vex-High formations. They turned their own deaths into weapons. Hive Lord Zexara, commanding ground forces in what had once been London, sent increasingly desperate reports to her flagship. "Great Overlord, we're taking enormous casualties. The humans fight like they're already dead. Press the attack," Kethrak ordered. They cannot maintain this level of resistance forever. But privately, he was beginning to doubt that assumption. These humans seemed capable of fighting long past the point where victory was impossible. Their very biology appeared to resist the natural order of conquest and submission. On the 5th day of the ground assault, Kethrak received a transmission from the deepest bunker on Earth. The image showed Admiral Rodriguez, still alive despite all the destruction above. The human leader looked tired and battered, but his eyes burned with undiminished determination. "High Overlord Kethrak," Rodriguez said, somehow knowing exactly who was listening. "My name is Admiral Marcus Rodriguez. I'm the commanding officer of what's left of Earth's defense forces." Kethrak activated his own transmission system. "Admiral Rodriguez, you fought well, but your resistance is over. Surrender now and we will make your final processing quick." Rodriguez laughed, a sound that sent chills through Vex-High warriors who heard it. "Surrender? You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? I understand that your species faces extinction." "Maybe," Rodriguez agreed. "But you know what? We've been facing extinction since we climbed down from the trees. Ice ages, plagues, wars, natural disasters, we've survived them all. And do you know how?" Kethrak waited, curious despite himself. "We survive by making sure that anything that tries to kill us pays such a terrible price that nothing else wants to try. Computer, initiate Pandora protocol." Deep beneath Earth's surface, machines that had been building for weeks finally activated. In laboratories hidden far underground, human scientists had been working frantically since the day the Vex-High fleet arrived. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had analyzed Vex-High biology from tissue samples recovered from the first battle. And they had created something terrible. It started small, just a few. Vex-High warriors reporting system malfunctions in their biomechanical implants. Then more. Within hours, every Vex-High on Earth was experiencing failures in their technological enhancements. The virus spread through their biomechanical systems like wildfire. It was specifically designed to target the fusion of flesh and metal that made the Vex-High so dangerous. Their enhanced strength failed. Their weapon implants stopped working. Some warriors found their own mechanical parts turning against them. But the virus was more than just a weapon. It carried embedded data, human cultural information that spread through the Vex-High communication network. Military records from every war humanity had ever fought. Historical documents describing human resistance to conquest. Art and music that expressed the human refusal to accept defeat. Every Vex-High who survived the virus found their minds filled with human memories. They saw images of Spartans at Thermopylae, holding a mountain pass against impossible odds. They witnessed the siege of Stalingrad, where humans ate rats and fought in frozen ruins rather than surrender. They learned about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where humans had unleashed the power of the sun itself rather than accept defeat. Aboard his flagship, Kethrak felt his own biomechanical systems beginning to fail. Alarms wailed throughout the ship as critical systems shut down one by one. "Great Overlord," his communication officer called out in panic. "The virus is spreading through our entire fleet. Every ship is reporting system failures." Kethrak looked at his tactical display, watching as ship after ship went dark. His magnificent fleet, the pride of the Vexhai Empire, was dying. But worse than the physical destruction was the knowledge flooding his mind. Human memories and experiences poured into his consciousness, showing him what his species had truly awakened. These were not just primitive animals to be harvested. These were survivors who had faced extinction a dozen times and had fought their way back each time. They were a species that would rather destroy themselves than submit to conquest. They were creatures who turned their own deaths into weapons. They were predators who disguised themselves as prey until it was too late. "Signal full retreat," Kethrak ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. "All ships withdraw from the Sol system immediately." "Great Overlord?" Zexara's voice came through the failing communication system. "What about the harvest? What about the conquest?" "There will be no conquest," Kethrak replied. "Archive this encounter. Mark the species designation human with the highest threat classification. They are never to be contacted again under any circumstances." As the surviving Vexhai ships fled the Sol system, they carried the virus with them. It spread through the Empire's biomechanical network, ensuring that every Vexhai in the galaxy learned the lesson of Earth. The humans had not just defeated a Vexhai fleet. They had created a permanent reminder of the cost of making war on humanity. The virus would continue to evolve, adapting to any attempts to remove it. For the rest of their existence, the Vexhai would carry human memories in their minds. Years later, the Sol system became known throughout the galaxy as a quarantine zone, not because it was dangerous to visit, but because the species that lived there was too dangerous to disturb. In cantinas and trading posts across known space, aliens whispered warnings about the small blue world that had broken the mighty Vexhai Empire. They spoke of a species that fought with such ferocity that even thinking about attacking them was considered a form of madness. The Vexhai Empire still existed, but it was changed. They no longer expanded aggressively into new territories. They no longer saw every other species as potential food. Instead, they patrolled the edges of their territory nervously, always watching for signs of human expansion, because they knew, with the certainty that only survivors can possess, that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to turn extinction itself into a weapon. And somewhere in the deep reaches of space, automated human probes carried the Pandora virus to distant worlds, ensuring that the galaxy's most feared predators would never forget the lesson they had learned the hard way. Never start a war with humans. They don't fight to win. They fight to make sure you regret ever being born.